Menzoberranzan is a first-person dungeon crawler, set in the ever-popular world of Dungeons & Dragons, specifically in the corner of that world that Drizzt Do'Urden calls his home. In this oft-forgotten adventure, we travel from the plains of Icewind Dale to the titular City of Spiders itself. Whether you're a seasoned adventurer in the Forgotten Realms, or you're just here to try and figure out what a Menzoberranzan is, I invite you to join me on this quest through a gold box classic, on the cusp of its 30-year anniversary, to see if it's worth playing all these years later. The tongue-twisting title of our game, and the ultimate destination of our quest, is Menzoberranzan. Menzoberranzan is the City of Spiders, one of the large cities inhabited by the evil Lolth-worshipping sect of Dark Elves, or Drow Elves. Lolth, also known as the Queen of Spiders, is an evil goddess who revels in duplicity and chaos. In this city was born one of the Forgotten Realms' most famous characters, Drizzt Do'Urden. For the uninitiated, Drizzt is a rare, good dark elf born into a city of evil. Being unable to accept the evil nature of his kind, Drizzt escaped the City of Spiders and fled to make a name for himself in the harsh lands of Icewind Dale. He is near peerless as a swordsman in the realms, and probably one of, if not the most famous character in D&D lore. I'm a huge fan of Drizzt, having just finished the 39th, and currently final, book in the series. R.A. Salvatore can write another anytime. That'd be fine by me. All that said, anytime I would find a game with Drizzt in it, even if he was shamelessly shoehorned in, I was always quick to give it a try. Despite that, I somehow missed this game named after his home city, so this playthrough is about 30 years overdue. As with any good Dungeons & Dragons adventure, our first stop is character creation. Character creation here is sort of neat, if a little tedious. The whole thing is in 3D animations. Sort of a neat gimmick for the time, but very time-consuming on multiple playthroughs. You actually get to create not one, but two characters at the start of this adventure. My first thought was to try and rebuild the companions of the Hall. Again, for those not versed in Drizzt's lore, these are essentially his traveling buddies. After giving it a bit of thought, however, I've decided to be a bit more original and make my own unique player characters. As we're going to adventuring with Drizzt, who is a lawful good, or chaotic good, depending on the timeline, character, I decided I would stay in the realm of good aligned characters for myself. Character 1 is a human paladin. Always my standout choice. I named him Walrus because I'm super original and full of great name ideas. Character 2, I made a dwarf cleric. Not for any tangible reason, just because I think dwarf clerics are sort of neat. I'm glad I did though, as I'll explain further once we get into the gameplay. This game also allows you to roll on stats, similar to the original Baldur's Gate games, but it has a bit of a twist on the formula in that it lets you just full-on pick whatever stats you want for your character if you don't like your rolls. I may have just slightly overcooked my paladin, but that's okay. Paladins are supposed to be an unstoppable righteous force. With our characters created, we drop right into the game world. The story on offer here is basic. Our band of adventurers have just saved this village from what I presume is supposed to be a dragon. 90s animation is a little bit rough, but we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. After what I'm sure was a glorious victory, we have arrived at the tavern to get some much-deserved rest and relaxation. Unfortunately, instead of being offered a drink at the tavern, we're greeted by a frantic innkeeper, informing us the city has been raided by dark elves and is on fire. Never one to back down from a challenge, we rush outside to see how we can help. Now, this is as good a time as any to explain why a cleric is an invaluable choice on our journey. As you can see, the visuals for this game, and particularly the draw distance in dark areas, leave a bit to be desired. This can be improved substantially using a light spell, which clerics are able to cast out of the gate. While this may seem of minor importance, keep in mind this game is about a descent into the Underdark and the City of Spiders. It is an extremely dark game. I almost feel like it would be borderline unplayable without a cleric in your ranks with how dark everything is. Anyway, lucky for me, I have an odd fondness for dwarven clerics. We cast our light spell and are off into the night. I wander aimlessly looking for a way to put the fires out, occasionally killing a few dark elves along the way. Before too long, I find some buckets and a well, and we put the fire out in no time. This is also the perfect time to mention that the game has a map writing system, allowing you to put your own custom notes on the in-game map. Always a feature I like to see, and is weirdly immersive. Once the fires are out, we have a chat with the captain of the guard. He informs us that the villagers have been captured, and we debate whether Drizzt is behind this. He is a vile dark elf after all.
Hello, Colin. Out and about?
I am. Same as yourself.
Good, good.
I hear you're a racist now, Father.
What?
How did you get interested in that type of thing?
Who said I'm a racist?
Everyone's saying it, Father.
The captain of the guard joins us, and just before departing in pursuit, we make a pit stop back at the inn to collect a reward. A magical helmet. It gives us +2 AC, which is just peachy to me. We stick it on our head and make our way into the dale. Outside the city, we are assaulted by all manner of creatures, from gnolls and bugbears to giants. I found out after my playthrough there's apparently a centaur companion out here that I guess I just totally missed. The completionist in me is devastated. We eventually stumble upon the home of a gem enchanter. He sort of screws us around a bit, but eventually reveals we need a special enchanted gem to brave the underdark radiations. As an avid D&D reader, I don't know that the underdark having deadly radiation is canon, but whatever, we'll just roll with it. He offers to enchant the gems, but says we need to provide them ourselves. Fair enough, I suppose. Not long after leaving the shack, we are accosted by a particularly devious-looking giant. Before we can so much as parley with the large man, a comically small ranger cuts him down. A dramatic reveal shows us to be our much-anticipated goodly drow, Drizzt. We chat for a bit, and he dumps some exposition about a path to the Underdark through an old mineshaft, then offers to join our group. Being as he is a level 15 ranger, and the main reason I decided to play this game, we eagerly accept him onto our team. I don't know why he has a gold metal plate on his head. We still need our radiation-blocking Underdark gems, but before finding the cave containing them, we come across another new ally. Vonar is a birdman who had his wing injured in a skirmish with the escaping drow. He has vowed revenge and wants to join our party. He is not only triple-classed as a fighter, mage, and thief, but he's also a cool race. So we kick out the captain of the guard and we welcome him into our band. To the east, we find the lair of the Lukrata. Not a creature I'm overly familiar with. They're some sort of hoofed cat beast that can speak. Sort of cool. We wipe them out in their own homes and take their gem collection for ourselves. Returning to the enchanter, he gets our gems ready to go, and just like that, we're prepared for our journey underground. We say goodbye to the sunlight and make our way under the earth. Now is as good a time as any to point out a major flaw with this game, as it really becomes evident once we start our way down. Things started strong with the story in this game. The town's on fire, villagers captured, and even getting our gems to traverse the Underdark. All of these gave the player a sense of purpose and direction in the game. Now that we're underground, that is pretty much put on hold until we reach Menzoberranzan, which in itself is a relatively short segment of the game. There are little scraps of a narrative here and there, but for the most part, the next hours of the game are focused on combat and maze-like dungeon crawling. It's by no means bad, and the good variety of enemies and locales keeps things somewhat interesting, but it's a shame that the narrative is pretty much paused most of the game while we journey downward. Anyway, not to put a huge damper on things, just a good time to work it in, as we're going to be jumping through some of these sections quickly, as there's little to discuss outside the standard hack-and-slash maze-exploring gameplay. Not far into the cavern, we come across a burly human fighter named Manahath. He's a friendly sort, even willing to join us on our quest, But I'm happy with our composition right now, so we wish him well and carry onward. Also, his beard is significantly cooler than mine, and I don't like competition.
Damn it all! Sorry.
Hey, shut up! Keep it down!
Look, there's nothing I can do, all right?
Outside.
After a couple of hours of spelunking and moving deeper into the caverns, we come across a dwarven cleric who seems, to put it lightly, insane. His name is Bornarak, and his artwork does a great job depicting a dwarf that has completely lost his mind underground. Hey, maybe it's that underdark radiation. Glad we have our gems now. He is a recruitable companion, however, being as we already have a dwarven cleric, I decide to leave him to his own devices. I sort of regret this going forward. He probably would have been a more interesting companion than our silent birdman, or he would have caved our heads in while we slept. You know, it's 50-50.
I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
Questing onward, we find the entrance to an underground lake, and within that lake, what appears to be a scantily clad woman. Moving in close reveals this to be a trap, and she becomes an aboleth, ready to send us to a watery grave. Luckily, we have a level 15 ranger and an overtuned paladin on our side, and before long the aboleth becomes sushi. Moving on, we come out of the caves into the mine proper. The place is just overrun with drow dwarves, the weird blue dwarves that appear to have dislodged the proper dwarven owners of these mines. We hack our way through and come to yet another potential companion, a teenage elf ranger/archer. If the mad dwarven cleric didn't make the cut, this teenage angst-driven elf wasn't getting on the team either. In a frankly unexpected twist, denying her access to her party pisses her off, and she reveals herself to be a Yokol, the handmaiden of Loth. Luckily, Drizzt has magic weapons, so we can send her back to the abyss where she belongs. I do sort of wonder what the outcome would be if we had taken her with us. So many choices. Next, we find the dwarven stronghold presumably built to house the dwarven miners. This place is also lousy with drow dwarves. There is a taste of the story here, with it being revealed that there is a civil war in Menzoberranzan, and the drow have allied with House O'Bludra against House Do'Urden and House Bainry. House Fay Bronk is also involved in some way. All super exciting, but ultimately of little importance to us. We just want to rescue our village dudes. Also, I don't think it's mentioned at all in the game, but House O'Bludra are an oddity among the Dark Elves, in that they don't use traditional magic. They use mind magic. So realistically, spying on them through a hole in the wall probably wouldn't have worked out. The priestess would have just sensed us there and read our thoughts. My immersion is destroyed. We also rescue another team member while we are here. A gnome thief named Vlakvlerdling. That is the one and only time I will attempt to pronounce his name. He can just be called V from now on. He is just riddled with some sort of disease, but apparently thinks the Myconids can cure him if we just take him with us. He's not the prettiest fellow, what with all the boils, but I'm tired of my ineffective mage at this point, so we give the Birdman the boot. Not much else happens here in the temple. We mine some gems and throw a diamond into a blue fire, then get the hell out. On our escape from the temple, we are assaulted by a pack of Dark Elves who kidnap Drizzt and leave us a party member short. Sort of regret getting rid of Birdman, as we're now a 3-man group. Ah well, the quest continues. We take a short minecart ride down to the next section of the Underdark. And we end up in what appears to be a fungal cavern. After bashing in some mushrooms and moldy skeletons, we find the Myconid King. He has the cure for our gnarly-looking gnome buddy, but wants us to kill an Umber Hulk as payment before they'll fix him up. Being as we're down to 3 members at this point, I don't want him to die, so we acquiesce. The Umber Hulk turns out to be literally 0 challenge, and we fix up our gnome friend's complexion. He literally has nothing to say when cured, but I like to assume he is thankful. Actually, I don't think he says a word for the entire rest of the game. These characters don't exactly have detailed story arcs. It seems like once they're in your party, they become mute. Next in our carnival of underdark weirdness, we come across a talking stone wall who sounds just like you would expect a talking stone wall to sound.
Greetings, soft ones. I live here in the rock, a creature of the walls. I have been watching.
He wants us to retrieve his amulet, then he will give us passage into the Underdark. It turns out his amulet is like 15 feet away, so this proves the easiest request yet. We continue on for a while, then randomly come across our bird companion again. We're a man short, so we bring him back on board. At this point, the endless cave drive is starting to lose me. Luckily, we aren't too far from Menzoberranzan now, with just one more quest to complete along the way. We meet a surprisingly friendly Drider who offers to get us into the city, providing we in turn assist him in becoming a drow again. If you don't know what a Drider is, it's a half-drow, half-spider monstrosity that used to be a dark elf. Generally, they are transformed as a form of punishment for offending Lolth or one of her priestesses. It is considered just about the worst fate a drow elf can undergo. Once more, I want to point out that a Drider turning back into a drow is damn near unheard of in the Forgotten Realms. It does occur in some of the newer books by R.A. Salvatore, but it pretty much takes an act of God to accomplish. On top of that, even if you could undo the Drider curse, it is pretty well akin to spitting in the face of a literal evil goddess. I can't imagine many drow would take that risk for a mere male drow of no station. Suspending our disbelief, we take up the Drider on his offer, and he gives us a spell to temporarily become a spider, allowing us to access the city. Finally, we are here, the fabled City of Spiders. It's at this point the game really picks up for me. The characters and places are interesting and varied, the story picks back up, and the gameplay becomes more than a glorified cereal box maze. We are going to be all over the place in this city, but stop one is the bazaar. There are two stops of interest here. First is to an older drow who is very interested in our helmet we got at the start of the game, the one from the innkeeper for putting out the fires. He offers us some magic candles and a healing box. Being as I already sort of feel overpowered, I make the trade with him because, why not? I love me some candles.
Do you understand if you wax it, the candle's going on the ground? He's gonna wax it. Did you get that?
Next stop here is to our Drider friend's contact. She turns out to be his girlfriend, or maybe wife, though drow are a highly matriarchal society, where men are seen as second-class citizens, so she's not so much interested in helping the Drider for any romantic reasons, it's more like she wants her property restored. Saving him is like getting her car out of impound. Ah well, so long as we can feel good about helping out, I guess that's what matters. I'm too distracted by the fact that none of the drow seem fazed by a group of humans and dwarves wandering their city causing havoc. We are sent to the Tower of Sorcier to find a powerful mage who can help fix the Drider's curse. Upon arriving there, we find a friendly drow who offers to help for the cost of our magic healing box. We agree, and he tells us the Drider's soul is imprisoned in the throne of House Bainry, Menzoberranzan's leading house. We are given a scroll to help hide ourselves to get into the throne room. Arriving in the throne room, it proves exceedingly easy to break the Drider's curse, and we are treated to a cutscene where he is tastefully covered up the entire time. Unfortunately, breaking the curse has attracted some attention to us. Matron Mother Bainry, the city's most powerful priestess, has discovered us, and weirdly has her Illithid companion and the innkeeper from the start of the game with her. He was never captured. How bizarre that he is here. We find out that the innkeeper is in league with the drow, and was enlisted to get a magical helmet into the hands of House Bainry. For some reason I cannot fathom, he decided the best way to do that was to give us the helm, since we're headed down to Menzoberranzan anyway. This makes literally zero sense. The innkeeper is here now, so obviously he was capable of bringing the helm himself. Why didn't he just do that? Why the convoluted plot to get him to have us bring it unknowingly? Hell, if he really didn't want to make the trip, why did he not just entrust it to some of the raiding drow? Or give it to one of the captured villagers and transport it that way? This is truly the most mind-boggling part of the entire story for me. Anyway, Matron Bainry is not happy to hear we sold the helm, which we now learn is incomplete and called the Helm of Spiders. She punishes the innkeeper by having her illithid feast on his brain. Gross, but sort of deserved. It's not like he was using that brain anyway. Matron Bainry then lets us know that we can leave, but we are expected to retrieve the helm for her. Now, not to harp, but again, Matron Bainry is probably herself one of the more powerful characters, and she controls a literal army whose power is unmatched in the Underdark. Why is she entrusting the return of her prized helmet to a lawful good paladin and his lawful good dwarven cleric ally? It doesn't matter regardless. This particular thread of story is never again picked up on. I guess the matron had other things to worry about. After returning to the bazaar, we find the shopkeeper we sold the helmet to is dead, and the helm has been squirreled away to House Do'Urden. Nothing we can do about that right now. Returning to the other tent, we find our Drider friend and his lady together at last, both in their drow forms. They do us a couple of favors as thanks for the help. First, they open a small portal so that we can speak to the gem enchanter from the start of the game. He informs us that one of the gems he enchanted for us is part of the Helm of Spiders. There is literally a spider engraved on it. Like, dude, you're supposed to be a gem expert. You could have pointed that out at the start of the game. Incompetent gem enchanters aside, we are also instructed to meet a wizard at House Fay Bronk, who can disguise us as drow to help gain access to House Do'Urden, where the prisoners and Drizzt are being held. We go to Fay Bronk and are transformed into drow. This appears not to be just a simple illusion, as it literally never wears off for the rest of the game and gives us drow powers like levitation and globes of darkness. I think Buddy literally changed our race forever. I guess we're cool with it. Next, we meet up with Drizzt Do'Urden, the patron of House Do'Urden. It's hard not to admire his style.
Yes, perhaps so, though I rarely use the word. Others passing through have whispered.
He's seeking to increase his standing in drow society and wants the helm for himself, so he is willing to help us gain access to his home to steal it from his own matron. He gives us a map and a passphrase to get in, but says we will need insignias as well that he cannot provide. The insignias themselves can be sourced from none other than Jarlaxle himself. If you aren't familiar with the Drizzt series, Jarlaxle is the head of a mercenary band, Bregan Darth. Essentially, they are con men and tricksters working in the shadows of Menzoberranzan and beyond. Think of it as sort of a thieves' guild, but a little more complex. Jarlaxle himself is a flamboyant fellow, bejeweled from head to toe in lavish clothing not generally seen on other drow, or anyone, really. He sends us on a pile of fetch quests that ultimately nets us the insignias we need. With the passphrases, insignias, and disguises, we finally have everything we need to get into House Do'Urden. Once inside, there are literally, 4 guards and a handful of giant lobsters inside. I wonder why we didn't just storm the walls. This place is apparently undefended. Inside, we find the Helm of Spiders, but that twirly-mustached bastard Risen attacks us for it on sight. I decide to see what my death scroll I've been holding onto does. Apparently it turns Risen into a fine paste, so that's cool. We build the Helm of Spiders and continue on to face Matron Malice. The final battle here is pretty unremarkable. There is another handmaiden of Lolth, and a swarm of spiders in the room with the matron, but I've been saving scrolls and powerful consumables the entire game, and using them all has made me an unstoppable juggernaut. Once the matron is dead, a death I will add is not canon to the books. We are treated to a cutscene of Drizzt being freed and us opening the door to the imprisoned villagers. Villagers that should be dead from Underdark radiation, but I guess we're ignoring logic at this point. Anyhow, Drizzt leads us home using his advanced knowledge of the Underdark. We are treated to the cheering applause of the returned villagers, and the credits roll. Menzoberranzan is one of many, many games to make use of the Dungeons & Dragons license in the early 90s. And while it's not by any means a bad game, it certainly isn't what I would consider a masterpiece. The gameplay is fine, if a little simple. Playing like many dungeon crawlers of the time, everything is controlled by the mouse. After getting accustomed to it, I did very much prefer the smooth movement controlled by the mouse, rather than the grid-based movement you saw in games like Lands of Lore. The combat system was fine, but the game never felt difficult. Everything could just be clicked on until it died. Part of this may be my fault. As I stated, I sort of overcooked my characters, so I may have unintentionally put the game on easy mode, but I still can't imagine the game being very difficult, even with a weaker set of champions. Like many games from this era, it would have benefited from a smaller mini-map, rather than forcing the player to constantly open their map book during gameplay, especially with how maze-like the dungeons could be. I do understand this could be a limitation of the hardware at the time, but it certainly would have helped. I did enjoy that writing on the map was allowed, making navigation easier that way. In terms of looks, the game is not perfect. It has excellent animation and dialogue, in the menus, and even the HUD itself. The game window is extremely limited, even for a game of this time. I felt that the draw distance was low, and you practically had to have a light spell cast at all times to see more than a foot in front of your character. I believe if you're going to make a game set in caves and dark areas, you need to contrive a way for them to be able to see. Much of this game is just ugly caves and keeps, but it does shine in areas like the taverns and bazaars of Menzoberranzan. The early cave levels also deserve a shout out for being genuinely scary at times. I played this game as an adult, but I can imagine a younger version of myself being very much scared by some of the creepier sections here. The game is also fully voice acted, a bit of a rarity for a game in this era. All in all, the voice acting is pretty good. A couple of the characters don't sound exactly how I would imagine it, but that could just be me coloring my opinions as a fan of the books. The ambient music isn't bad either, however it seemed to just randomly stop at times, leaving me in a silent game world. This could possibly have been due to DOSBox, but I can't say for sure. Also, combat music seemed to be tied to the actual locations of enemies, so you often would get a blast of combat music, even from being in a room adjacent to enemies. It made it pretty well impossible for enemies to get the jump on you. It was almost like they were carrying boomboxes everywhere. All in all, Menzoberranzan is a good game, but it's far from the best dungeon crawler of its time. I generally enjoyed myself. Even the control scheme was a seamless learning curve. There were a good number of spells and varied monster designs throughout. The game's biggest fault is it's completely backloading all the story elements. So much of the game is just caves and smashing miscellaneous creatures. The game would have likely had a far better reception and reach if they had cut 80% of the caves and replaced it with more story and adventure in the actual city that is the namesake of this game. Overall, would I recommend this game in the year 2023? Yes, but with the reservation that you will probably enjoy it more if you're a fan of the source material. It was fun for me to see characters from the books that I love in a video game setting. Generally, when Drizzt is put in a game, he is shoehorned in without any real regard as to whether he should be there, and while a lot of the events in this game are not canonically accurate, it is still fun to romp through this familiar world with familiar characters. That's all I have to say about Menzoberranzan. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. We're almost up to 10 subscribers. Also, feel free to correct my pronunciation of any of the varied and confusing D&D names and places. It will only hurt my feelings a little bit. With that, I'll leave you with some footage of Drizzt creepily staring at you. See you next time.